For about 30 years, the people who knew the most about Mars believed somebody was living on it. This was the mainstream: observatories, star charts, learned societies, front pages. They had mapped the network a dying civilization was using to move meltwater from its polar caps down into its deserts, hundreds of channels, thousands of miles long, meeting each other at junctions. Some of them had names. And they had reason to. Put your eye to a telescope in the autumn of 1894 and look for yourself. Mars is a small trembling disk, orange as a coal, swimming in and out of focus as the air moves. You wait. Then, for half a second, the air goes still, and the whole face of the planet snaps into clarity. Across it run lines. Fine, straight, dark lines crossing the deserts and meeting at neat little junctions. Then the air shivers, and they are gone. You would write down what you saw. So did they. The lines were not on Mars, but they were not invented either. Welcome to Sketches of Never, where we visit the world that everyone could see. This is the story of the canals of Mars. It begins in 1877 with the best view of Mars anyone would get for years. Earth and Mars had swung close together, an opposition, when Mars sits opposite the Sun and burns steady and red all night. In Milan, at the Brera Observatory, an Italian astronomer named Giovanni Schiaparelli spent that season mapping it. He was extraordinarily good. He was also red-green color blind. It may even have helped, where ordinary eyes saw a wash of orange, his caught the faint differences in brightness, and that is all the markings on Mars ever were. The map he produced was the best anyone had made, and the naming system he invented for it, Syrtis Major Hellas Elysium, is still printed on maps of Mars today. And across that map he drew a web of thin dark lines and labeled them with the ordinary Italian word for a groove or a channel, canali. In Italian, that word carries no builder. A river cuts a canali, but translated into English it arrived as canals, and a canal is a thing somebody digs. 9 years before, the Suez Canal had opened, and age busy carving continents in half with steam shovels knew exactly what a canal implied. A single word slid one notch sideways, and a geological feature became an engineering project. Schiaparelli himself stayed careful for years, and never fully committed to who or what had made them. Someone else was willing to. Percival Lowell was a Boston aristocrat, a mathematician by training, a diplomat and travel writer by choice, and the holder of a large family fortune. In 1894, at 39, he read about Mars and redirected his entire life at it. What he did next was, whatever else you think of him, serious. Lowell understood that the real enemy of astronomy is air, the churning atmosphere that makes stars twinkle and planets blur. So instead of building near a city, he sent an assistant across the American West to test the steadiness of the sky and put his observatory on a mesa above Flagstaff in the high, dry Arizona territory at 7,000 feet. Choosing a site for its seeing rather than the convenience of its trustees was close to novel then. Mountaintop observatories are the standard now. He put an excellent telescope on that mesa, and for the next 22 years he watched Mars, and what he saw there organized itself, season by season, into a plan. His case began with things anyone could check. Mars is smaller than Earth, with weaker gravity and a thinner skin of air. It has visible polar caps that shrink through the Martian summer and grow again in winter. That part is simply true, and you can watch it happen. As the caps retreat, a wave of darkening appears to spread from the poles toward the equator, season after season, also observed by many people for many years. So a small, old, drying world, losing its water to space, with the last of it locked up as ice at the poles and released once a year. Now put an intelligent species on it. What would they do? They would not fight each other over rivers. They would build the largest irrigation system possible, planet-wide, to carry meltwater from the poles into the dying equatorial deserts. And that is what Lowell believed he was watching. He even had an answer to the obvious objection. The lines were far too wide to be waterways. Some appeared to be tens of miles across, and no ditch is visible from another planet. Lowell agreed. What you see, he argued, is not the canal. It is the strip of irrigated vegetation greening along its banks, wide enough to show, following a channel too narrow to ever see. The lines darkened after the poles melted, in the right order, spreading outward, as crops would. As hypotheses go, it had everything: a mechanism, a seasonal prediction, and an explanation for its own weak points. Lowell laid it out in 3 books and made Mars the most famous planet in the sky. And a great many astronomers told him from the beginning that he was wrong. The trouble was that the canals behaved strangely for real objects. They did not get clearer in better telescopes. They got worse. Observers with larger instruments, like Edward Emerson Barnard on the 36-inch refractor at Lick Observatory, reported a Mars of mottled, irregular detail with no straight lines in it at all. That is exactly backwards for something genuinely there. Sharpen your view of a real coastline, and you see more coastline. Sharpen your view of the canals, and they dissolved into freckles. The man who made that undeniable had drawn canals himself. Eugene Antoniadi was a Greek-born observer working in France, and he had spent years mapping Mars with lines on it. In September 1909, during another favorable opposition, he turned the great 83-centimeter refractor at Meudon, outside Paris, onto the planet, on a night of exceptional steadiness. The canals came apart in front of him. Where the lines had been, he saw knots, patches, modeling, irregular shading, detail, but no geometry anywhere in it. He changed his mind in public and became the most trusted Mars observer of his generation. And in 1903, 2 men at Greenwich had already shown why it happened. Walter Maunder and John Evans took a plain disk, marked it with soft, irregular smudges and dots, and no lines whatsoever, and hung it in front of a room of schoolboys, and asked them to draw what they saw. The boys near the front drew smudges. The boys far enough back, where the markings hovered right at the limit of their eyesight, drew a network of fine, straight lines connecting them. They had reproduced the canals of Mars in a classroom, out of children who had never heard of Schiaparelli. The lines were the work of the human visual system itself, doing what it does whenever it is handed a pattern just below the threshold of resolution. It completes it. It joins the dots, because joining the dots is most of what seeing is. And the method of the age made it worse. Photography could not yet capture Mars usefully, so the finest instrument available really was a trained observer's eye, snatching an impression in the half-second when the atmosphere went still. The technique rewarded a decisive, pattern-hungry eye. It selected for the illusion. In 1907, the habitability went too. Alfred Russel Wallace, the co-discoverer of natural selection, then in his 80s, worked through the physics of Martian temperature and air and published a short, devastating book. Mars was not merely uninhabited but uninhabitable, far too cold and far too thin-aired. Lowell never gave it up. He died in 1916, at his observatory, still defending the canals, by then spending much of his effort hunting a 9th planet he had calculated should exist beyond Neptune. He did not find it. 14 years after his death, in the search program he had funded and started, a young assistant named Clyde Tombaugh found Pluto from that same mesa. Its old planetary symbol is a monogram, PL. The final word took another 35 years. In July 1965, Mariner 4 flew past Mars and sent back 21 pictures, taking hours to trickle down as strings of numbers. They showed a cratered, cold, apparently lifeless landscape and an atmosphere under 1% as thick as ours. No canals, no cities. The newspapers ran it as a death notice, and everyone alive who had ever half believed in the Martians felt something close to grief. The ending took 6 more years, and it is the reason this story is worth your evening. In 1971, Mariner 9 arrived and stayed, and mapped the whole planet, and found, cut into those deserts, the beds of enormous ancient rivers, flood channels, dry lakes, water, long gone. Mars really is a small, old, drying world that lost its oceans. Lowell got the planet almost right. And his wrong Mars did something no correct Mars could have. It gave us Wells's Martians and Burroughs's Barsoom and a century of writers and children looking up at a red star and wanting badly to know what was on it. The people who built the spacecraft that finally disproved him grew up on his Mars. The canals were the reason anybody bothered to look. The lines were a real measurement. They just measured the observer instead of the planet. The boys at the back of that classroom were not lying, and they were not stupid. They reported exactly what they saw, and Schiaparelli's word was right all along. His word was canali, which simply means channels. Mars has channels, nearly 500,000 miles of them, cut by running water and dry for billions of years before anyone looked through a telescope. The translation added the diggers. The diggers were the only part that was never there. So what are we all looking at right now that will turn out to have been canals? Tell me in the comments.